school I played rugby. I was at Arnold in the northwest, so got picked up by Lancashire, played for England schools, and went to university over in Leeds. And then in my first year at Leeds, I already got picked up by Saracens. So I completed my degree at Leeds, but started travelling down to Saracens at, 18, 19 years old. And then just played for them till I retired, really.
Good. So from so your schooling, you talk a little bit about where you went up to uni. I know certainly where you are now, Durham, and Leeds. Was it Leeds Met or was it just Leeds Uni that you went to? I know
Leeds Carnegie
at the moment.
Leeds Carnegie it was then.
Leeds Carnegie, so big rivals. So is your heart still in Leeds, or it's obviously moved to Durham right now?
Different things, isn't it? You go there as a student. I think wherever you go, you have a good time. And you have memories, but I have to say, fantastic place, Durham. Absolutely fantastic.
So when you were kind of leaving sort of high school and your thoughts turned towards sort of education, were your thoughts ever in towards playing professional rugby and that's what you wanted to do, or was it education first and then rugby second?
I think in those days it was just kind of before pro rugby, so it was very much about getting your degree. I think most people were kind of on that. If you had the chance to go to uni, you did go to uni. Uni rugby wasn't great then, to be honest. So if there was an opportunity to go and play out somewhere for a decent side, then you did do. And at the time, obviously, Saracens were top 20 in the country, so that's where I wanted to go.
So how did that kind of come about? Obviously, a lad from the northwest, schooling at Arnold, and then off to Leeds. How did that connection come about?
I think really, if you were in England schools team, which I was in the England schools squad, you probably just everyone got pretty much hammered by every club. Were knocking on your door asking you to go and play there. Really
good. So I guess you moved down there. How long were you at Saracens?
14 years. 14
years. So from uni, you moved down there. Were you actually, was it job or was it full time? Was it?
Yeah, no, I worked as a job down there all the way through. So I felt full time playing rugby, but it at the time and probably trailblazed the fact that people had to go professional because we just couldn't do both. And I guess you kind of looked at your career after that, really. So it was kind of a bit of both, really. But you had to do a job. You couldn't survive on rugby alone.
Yeah. So from Saracens over to England, England B, and the extended England squad. No full cap. Can you explain what happened there?
The player in front of me was just a bit too good. God knows how many caps ago. But a guy called Peter Winterbottom. He was one of England's outstanding ever players. So there was never really much shots going on there, and he was pretty indestructible, even for a Yorkshireman.
So from the England B, Barbars. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Well, those were the days where you used to go and play. I mean, there were 4 games in a week over Easter weekend down in Wales. I think I played in the very last game they ever played, Penarth. And then they used to play, that was Friday, Cardiff Saturday, rest day Sunday, then Swansea Monday, Newport Tuesday. Yeah, you didn't play every single game, but quite often you might play 3 of the 4. They used to play a game called the Mobs Memorial at East Midlands as well. So there were in those days, probably the Barbars played 6 or 7 games a year. So to pick up 13 caps over a period of time was not the end of the world. But it was, then there were players who wanted to play for the Barbars, who played international rugby, but never got picked by the Barbars.
Okay, so if you was to swap your 13 Barbars cap for 1 England cap, is that a true statement?
That's a hard question, that. I mean, I love the Barbars games, played with some fantastic people. My first game was with Jonathan Davis, so I kind of wouldn't want to miss that. He was such a brilliant player. But yeah, England's got to be the ultimate goal. Anyone wants an international cap. who aspires in rugby.
Good. Okay, so from your ending of playing days, what got you into coaching?
I think, like a lot of people, it's just kind of a natural, progression. People ask you to come down to the club, or they'd known you. I think particularly because I was captain at Saracens for 5 years, you start coaching anyhow a bit as a captain and my coach at the time was a backs coach. I was a forward, so it kind of was natural that I would be doing quite a bit with the forwards. And then it just became fairly natural just to move forward. The irony of that is, I think you look at your first 3 years coaching, I do now, and think, oh my God, that was awful. Because you knew what to do and expected players to be able to do what players you played with could do.
Yeah, I mean, I've had sort of experience of you sort of coaching as both coaching as a player coach and being involved with you over at Hoppers. So you coached in at Manchester for a number of years and then moved on to Preston Grasshoppers?
Yeah, I've not had a break from rugby really since I was 18. So I was going to have a year off and then bumped into a guy called Neil Hitchin from Oral at Manchester, and he said, do you fancy coming to coach here? They were, I think, in North 2 at the time, and I was a bit concerned about whether I could actually coach at that level. I wasn't really sure that I would be able to translate given the level I'd always been at, so it was a bit concerning there. But there was such a brilliant set of lads. They really took to everything you did, and they zoomed up the leagues. I think we had something like 5 promotions in 6 years and ended up in the championship. So pretty heady days.
Good. So what was the biggest challenges you had when you were coaching club side? You talk a little bit there about the level where you were to perhaps going down level a little bit. What were the challenges?
I think commitment's one, expecting people to be as committed as you and understanding that there are other things in their lives that they've got to be committed to. Money was definitely one, because it was the start of professional rugby, very much so, or right in the middle of professional rugby, where people were looking for money and sometimes wanted the money but didn't want to put the commitment, so they were massively challenging times. And I think as you rose through the leagues, it's a bit like some football teams. You can go as high as you can, and some then reach a ceiling. I mean, I don't know whether, hopefully they haven't, but teams like Bournemouth you look at the moment in football, Burnley and guys like this, they've done brilliantly well. But is there a ceiling that they can go, and that there's an inevitability that one day you have to go back to what is your level?
Okay, so just a little bit on rugby as such, and I know I've spoken to you many times on a personal level, from with regards to rugby and professionalism, and the paying players, especially lower down in the leagues, the sustainability of clubs. Is there a worry that, certainly through the current pandemic that we're in at the moment, is there a real worry that we could lose some clubs?
I think there is a worry. I think it's probably a good reset time for a lot of clubs to actually sit there and go, actually, do we need to do this? Why are we paying players? Why are we doing this? What we try to achieve? What's our aims? I think it's a really good time now for the RFU and for clubs to actually re-evaluate what they're about, what their club is, what their reason for being is in some respects. A number of clubs are community clubs. That in itself tells you what it is. Everyone wants to win. Why do you play sport half the time if you don't want to just win? But you also want to enjoy it. It also fulfills other community needs. So I kind of think everyone's got to have a little bit of a reset.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of certainly people I've spoken to have, I don't know, in a really sort of strange way, have enjoyed the lockdown, so they can kind of clear their minds a little bit and think a little bit clearer and just have that time out, because it is full on. You are, fully encompassed in what you're thinking and what you're doing. I think that's been a real, it's just been a forced stop in your lives. And I know I found it, particularly difficult having being coaching so 6 days a week, and then all of a sudden nothing. Initially, it was a struggle to adjust, and then you start to sort of slowly, gradually get back into it. Have you found that, Alex? Because I know you're a man, you're a hands-on guy. You want to be involved, you want to be there, and has that been tough for you?
Yeah, I think you want to be hands-on, so you do miss that side. You miss not just that, you miss being with the lads and just the chat and the general vibe of what's going on there. But the other side is, I think it's been really good, because I think you can have a real. Sometimes when you're coaching or you're involved in rugby, you just kind of end up looking in a bit, and sometimes it's good because you can go and sit on the outside and actually just go, I've got a bit of time here, and I'm going to reevaluate a few things that we're doing, what we're doing well, what we're not, what we could be doing. And I think we've been bringing in a lot of online coaching at the moment and things like that, which I think going forward could be huge in terms of what we might benefit from. And when you actually sit there and think, why didn't we do this before? Whether it's looking at strategies or skills or whatever it is, why have we not used this facility more? We've been kind of moved into that corner.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think technology is it's an interesting, it's different thinking. It's understanding what you can and can't do, of course. Obviously, it's hard to get out actually on the pitch and put your boots on and do things, but the interaction is really important. That certainly from your players' point of view, and ensuring that. I suppose we had a conversation earlier in the week with Mark Jennings, who has kind of been well documented his problems and that mental health of players as well. And I'll talk a little bit about this just because of the expectations. So from a 16-year-old going into college or school, and the expectations and the pressures, how is that sort of translated through their education pathway?
Well, it's a big part of it, and you've got to make sure there's plenty of cushions in there, if that makes sense, and support areas to help these guys. Once you go to university, especially where it's someone like Durham, where the pressure academically can be quite high as well. The pressure rugby-wise is quite high as well, particularly if you're trying to aspire. So all of a sudden, you've got to make sure you keep all the ducks in a row with the guys and support them in every way they need. And that's without any other thing going on in kind of their personal lives. So for me, it's a huge thing at the moment. I think the lockdown's probably shown more than ever that sport is so important in our society to benefit mental health, without question.
Yeah, I guess from every single level, right up to the top level, and people have reacted differently to it, and people have accepted it and have done things, but found different ways of doing things. And like you said, it's offering the support certainly to our course at Myerscough, support on and off Zoom calls and just talking to people, but understanding where they're thinking as well. So yeah, I think mental health is really important and something that we should obviously be completely aware of. So from Preston to Durham.
Yeah.
How did it come about?
Well, a guy had talked to me about applying to this post that they were starting. It was a brand new post. They'd never had one before. So I had a look at it, put something in, and got the post. And to be honest, ever since then, I've never looked back. I've loved it. It's just been a great job. Every job has its kind of ups and downs, but this is just a brilliant. It's a brilliant ride. It's fantastic.
So, what was specifically? Could you say that it's really kind of did it re-engage you, or was it?
I think so. I think I felt club rugby had got into a morass of some fairly average players asking for quite a lot of money, and money became the reason to play. The beauty of university players, they go because they want to play, they want to learn, and that's for any coach is massively rewarding, that people are actually engaged and want to really take on what you want to talk about. And so that kind of changed the whole kind of way you went about things, because, and probably where I wanted to go back to, because I think club rugby had become really quite dull.
Yeah. So from kind of where you started 10 years ago, what sort of situation, what position were Durham in? Were they, one of the top rugby universities, or was it something that's had to be worked on?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't doing that well, which is why they put this appointment in. And so obviously things needed to be changed, need to be kind of upped a little bit, and professionalised is the wrong word, but certainly made sure that there was more attention to detail and things that were being done. So we're lucky, my first year went in and we won every game and won the league, and went to Twickenham and won the final at Twickenham. So it kind of, if you probably could have asked him for a better start, really.
Always happens to a new coach, Alex, doesn't it? New coach comes in and you win everything.
It does, but there were some great players there, and I was lucky. People like Josh Beaumont, who is now and has been captain at Sale, Simon Hammersley. Well, no, he wasn't there my first year, but Josh Beaumont, who've all gone on to pro rugby. So there were some bloody good players, and I think since then I've just seen the standard rise every single year. It literally is. It's kind of quite. It really has buzzed on from where we were winning the North League, and all right, we won at Twickenham. But now with the Bucks Super Rugby, everyone's playing a real tough game every single week, and there's 18 tough games. Whereas you can play in National League Rugby and you play 30 games, and it ends up like a drudge, because you end up. It's almost like, why we're playing this, because it's just because we have to. They were travelling 200 miles to go and play somebody, passing 40 clubs on the way. It just didn't make sense. Still doesn't make sense to me. And then the season length, it was all about, for me, one of the biggest things that I have a bit of a beef about with any sport is, at any level, it should be about quality and not quantity. It should be about how good that experience is, whether it's in the fourth team or the first team. It doesn't, whether it's college rugby at Durham or university rugby, it really has no bearing. What is that experience like? How good is the quality of it?
Yeah, I think there's some real good debate about that going on at the moment. With certainly in our county, Lancashire, with the breakaway leagues and the amount of travel that the RFU leagues have to do. So there's been some real interesting work done in there, and I think there's still quite a few people still sat on the fence as to which way is best. I know there's potentially another restructure coming on, so it could well be that there is a lot more regionalised rather than travelling 200 miles and passing 40 clubs, as you said. So I think that's going to be interesting with the structure there. But just going back to sort of Durham and Myerscough. So particularly Myerscough, we sent a number of our students through to you, which I can kind of go through a few. So Adam Brocklebank, Rory Hardman, Jake Squirrel, Scott Bowerman, sorry, and a number of others, Joe Duffy as well, and Jack Conte, of course. So these guys have come to you through doing a BTEC, and the question to me is, and it will be on the tips of parents and other people as well. So BTEC or A level, kind of how that route works in with Durham.
Well, a lot depends on the course you want to apply for. And that will be standard across the country, certainly for the red brick Russell Group universities like Durham. There are certain courses, business, sport, etc., where they can apply with BTEC. And to be honest, my view is, for some lads, that's the right way forward, because it's an easier, there's not the exam scenarios, there's a continuous assessment going on, which makes it not necessarily easier, but it's a better way for certain people to study. And so BTEC is the right thing for those people. If you want to do a degree in politics or history, I suspect you wouldn't get on it with BTEC. Certainly not somewhere like Durham. But there are courses, and if those courses are the ones that interest the students, and the students that you just talked about there did do business and sport, then for me, BTEC's the best way to go forward for them.
Okay, so just taking a couple of examples. So Adam Brocklebank, as just one example, is he came to you without being on any of the pro clubs' radars. So Adam did really well over at Myerscough, got on England counties. So that kind of highlighted that he wanted to then move on a little bit with his rugby. He didn't want to go pro because there wasn't, a big list of pro clubs waiting for him. So his choice was Durham. So Adam's pathway was very different to joining pro club.
I think Adam's a good example. I think there's all the guys you mentioned have got good different examples of what they've managed to achieve. I think the beauty of coming to any Bucks Super Rugby University is the chance of going on to become a professional rugby player. I think the challenge for most students when they get there is to sit there, and Adam was a classic first year, Keay, I've got to be a professional rugby player. Yeah, I know you have, Adam, but you come to do a degree as well. That's why you're here. And it's keeping those ducks in a row. And also, I think with a lot of academy players, they've just become so intense about being a professional rugby player. What they have to understand is it's how you perform that is going to decide whether you're going to be a professional rugby player, not how much you talk about it. So Adam got down to that, and by his second year, I thought he was absolutely outstanding. He stayed on top of his work. He got everything right. He got his social side of it, the whole social experience of going to university right as well, and came out, and in my view, could end up with 8 or 10 years top class rugby as a professional prop. But if it all goes wrong, he's got a pretty decent degree in his back pocket.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that is the way forward, without question.
Yeah, there's with only the few exceptions that people, and I've known people who've gone on to, sign contracts at 18, but then after a couple of years, if things haven't worked out for them, they've decided to go back or take a step back to do that education, because you're one step away, as we all know as rugby players, from getting a career injury. So I'm guessing it's, it is a plan B, but even the best players, even probably, the full internationals, if I was perhaps got a plan B, whatever that plan B is, obviously I don't know. But with Rory as Hardman in particular, I think Rory took a slightly different pathway, didn't he?
Yeah, Rory came, did a degree, wasn't quite, he was a very, very good player, but wasn't quite professional rugby. Not sure how much he would have wanted to be a professional rugby player either. Ended up doing a master's at Durham in sports law. Now, so all of a sudden he at the end of that is now training to be a lawyer. So he because he's been to Durham and done a degree and done well in that degree, he's then been able to go into a master's at Durham. So he's done very well for himself academically, gone from kind of doing a BTEC, which people would say, well, that's not really delivering anything. Well, it does. It's simple as, because he's gone to a degree, done well at his degree, enjoyed, I'm trying to think, 2-3 years first team rugby at Durham. And now he's training up to be a lawyer, or close to being finished, trained up as a lawyer. So he's really done well, and he wanted to concentrate on sports law. I just think it's opened. It's just about opening a box up for somebody.
Yeah, I think until a lot of, and this is kind of going to lead into sort of my last and final question, is a lot of kids are really confused when they get to 16, go through college or A levels, and they come out the other end to university. I think there's still a little bit of confusion, especially the ones who have got a sporting background as to exactly what they do. Now, if you were, to give some advice to a 16-year-old coming now, either taking choices at either Vitagora level or going into Myerscough College in particular, what would that advice be?
I'd say to him, look, if you want to be a professional rugby player, that's great. Have a go for it with everything you can. Be realistic that actually you have to work incredibly hard to make the top in any sport, rugby is included. The second thing is if you can put yourself a plan B in place, whether that's university, because university isn't for everyone either, whether it's going to do a trade or something, but finding something. But if you put your eggs in one basket, I think you're asking for a problem, because then there's going to be a fall at some stage if you're not careful. And we've all been through that, whether it's injury, whether it's form, whether it's anything else. So if I were a 16-year-old, I'd just continue in my education. I've got to remember, most 16-year-olds probably have no idea what they want to do in the world. So, and I've been through that with both my own sons who went to uni, it wasn't for them and left uni. So at the end of the day, it's getting the right thing. At 16, you don't know what the right thing is. So if you don't, you may as well keep getting your education, in my view. And then, and not be sidetracked or stars in their eyes about professional rugby too early. If it happens, great. And drive as hard as you can to make it happen. But make sure you've got lots of ducks in your basket.